Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Now, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. Whether you're tuning in on the radio dial here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM, we welcome you all back to our program. Also, those tuning in through our online affiliates around the world, including our iHeartRadio family, we're glad to have all of you with us as well. Award-winning author Samuel Marquis is making his first appearance on our program to discuss not only his love of history, but also his brand-new book that I had a chance to read called BLACKBEARD, The Birth of America. We'll talk to Samuel not only about the writing of the book, but what it's been like for him to be able to entertain readers throughout the years and to be able to share his love of history through his books as well. If you're just now hearing about BLACKBEARD, we'll tell you at the end of our segment how you can get the book for yourself. But Samuel, hello to you and welcome to the program.
Hi, Cyrus. Thanks for having me.
Hey, the pleasure is definitely all mine. First of all, congratulations to you on this book. I mentioned to you before we went on the air here that this is my first book of yours for me to be able to read. It will not be my last. I'm definitely going to go back and read some of your other work. But what has it been like for you already to see the response to BLACKBEARD?
Well, I think, the important thing about BLACKBEARD is I know that, I don't know if you read my publicity profile, but I am the ninth great-grandson of Captain William Kidd, who was, a famous privateer and pirate. So this book was a book that my agent wanted me to do, 5 years ago, and I kept kind of putting it off because I was so busy with my World War II series. So I finally got around to doing it. And, the response has been great because, people are, love pirates, and it's kind of embedded in American, history and folklore. So for me, it's been a good experience.
Right. As someone who grew up loving history, Samuel, anytime I read a book that's historical in nature, I always get excited because I think there's so many fascinating things about history, so many fascinating individuals that a lot of times we think we know that we don't get to know. Has that been part of the fun for you as a storyteller, to take individuals that people have heard of and to be able to create this backdrop for them to be able to not only be able to share their story, but also be able to share your gift of writing as well?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm kind of an eclectic writer to some extent. So I've done, I have an international espionage series. I have my World War II series, World War II series, and now I have, these books that I'm kind of want to do a pirate book. I've done BLACKBEARD now. Of course, I want to do my ancestor, Captain Kidd. And so for me, it's always an exploration in, discovering new aspects of history and characters that have been kind of misrepresented. And I think BLACKBEARD falls into that category.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also think you have a gift, just by reading this book, Samuel, you have a gift of humanizing individuals when it comes to not only, of course, who they are, but also their lives. I think the reason I bring that up is because I think a lot of times when people hear individuals, in history, we don't always think about the fact that they were, individuals in relationships. They had individuals who had goals. They had thoughts just like we do. Has that been also part of the interesting thing for you to be able to do that with these individuals in your book?
Yeah, I think you've struck on probably the most important thing about historical fiction and also the direction that I'm going. My last two books, my last World War II book, Altar of Resistance, and this book, BLACKBEARD, and my next book are almost complete history books, really written in the style of a historical fiction. But I'm going in the direction of BLACKBEARD has no characters that are fictional at all. Every character is real. Almost every scene is a scene that actually occurred in history. And, of course, I have to, take some liberties with the dialogue and sort of character and stuff. But I try and dig really deep into the characters, and I'm really sticking to really history books that are written as historical fiction and unfolding in a movie-like narrative.
For sure, and that's exactly how it happens in this book. So you mentioned, of course, your own connection to history, Samuel. I mean, did that, almost seem like a given then that history would be one of the things that you would be interested in?
I think when I was a little kid, I was always kind of I played a lot of sports, so I'm a big lacrosse player. I still play lacrosse today and ski and stuff. And so I was kind of, a hyperactive kid, so I was always I was always playing sports and kind of, getting in trouble and out throwing snowballs at cars and crazy stuff like that in Denver growing up where we had a fair amount of snow. But I was also history obsessed. I used to have little Civil War soldiers that I would play with for hours, and I would set up battles, and I'd read these books, even when I was 6 to, probably, 14 years old, on the Civil War. I was kind of obsessed with the Civil War when I was little. And so I would read these, and, my friends would be like, what are you doing? You're looking at all these little Battle of Gettysburg, you're at Little Round Top, and you're over here, and studying these, these pictures of the layouts of the actual battles in these Civil War books. So I've also always obsessed with history and sports growing up, and I just always needed a lot of activity and stuff.
Right, for sure. Well, I think that is the great thing, and I think because of what you've been able to do, I think you've also been able to get people to look at history a little bit differently. Talk to us about the readership. Have you found that because you are able to write a variety of types of stories, Samuel, that has kind of opened up your readership to more than individuals that are just interested in history, but also those that are just looking for that action and adventure?
I cross over quite a bit between my international espionage series and my World War II series, kind of cross over because those are sort of similar readership. It's pretty high female and male because, females are really a high percentage of readers, and maybe even higher than men. I don't know the actual statistics, but I get a lot of people that cross over with, there's definitely a crossover between sort of World War II espionage and history and sort of this modern international espionage. And I try and have historical elements even in my modern espionage series. So again, they sort of, the Fourth Clarchak, my book right before Blackbeard, focused on a World War II issue and the Holocaust and stolen art, Nazi stolen art, and those kinds of things. So my books always, whatever the series is, always resonate with a lot of history in it. So I kind of cross over between those niches of readers.
For sure. And I think that's been one of the great things that people have been able to enjoy about your work. I want to say for those who are just tuning in, either on the radio side or online, you're listening to Conversations Live. We're excited to welcome award-winning author Samuel Marquis to our program today. Samuel is celebrating the release of his new book called Blackbeard, The Birth of America. We're about to get more into that book. And Samuel, I think, there were three things that really struck me in the book that, again, readers today can appreciate, regardless of where the book might be taking place, whether we're looking at the 1700s or even looking to where we are today. I mean, you're able to kind of bring us into the individuals that you're chronicling and their own search for, I think, self and discovery and what really matters in life. I think that's a big thing that a lot of people today can relate to. Their own mortality. That's another thing that comes up in this book. And again, that's an issue that we can look at today. And then our loved ones. I mean, one of the things that happens in the book is that, as an individual is supposed to be making a certain trip, and I'll talk around this, I don't spoil it, they end up telling the person they're speaking with that, I went to check on, someone who I hope to become my wife, and then, of course, to rally the individuals that will be traveling with me. I mean, talk to us about what it's been like for you to kind of look at those themes that, again, we don't always think about when we're looking at the 1700s and what was taking place. What was it like for you to kind of tie that into the reader today?
Well, I think one of the crucial things with, first of all, there's a lot of themes going on in Blackbeard, and I want to give you a lot of credit, Cyrus. You've read it closely, and I can see you're the exact kind of reader that I'd like to appeal to because you understand that the characters are what drive the novel.
Right.
And also, a good story, but it's character-driven. And I think the thing with Blackbeard that I want to connect to is he's been totally misrepresented by history as a cutthroat, a villain, a barbarous monster that killed and murdered and raped and plundered. And it's all, frankly, BS. It's not true at all. He, of course, was a pirate, so yes, he was seizing things from people, but he was really taking on the British crown and trying to undermine the 1% of his day. And, in some sense he was noble, in other sense he was notorious, but he never killed anyone until the day he was fighting for his life. And I hate to say that's a little bit of a spoiler, but it is. In terms of what he did with Caesar, his black African slave that at least I think was liberated by Blackbeard, and other authors have said, and historians have identified Caesar as being an important lieutenant under Blackbeard, or at least a fairly high-ranking seaman within his crew. I think that resonates with the modern reader in that, the pirates were actually liberating a large number of African Americans from the slave trade and fighting on their ships. So when Blackbeard, was fighting at Ocracoke in 1718 on November 22nd, 30% of his crew was African American. So what's important, I think, about the pirates is they were the first practitioners of the kind of liberty that really didn't occur in the United States until late, and it still was never 100% for African Americans at all, in what happened with the American Revolution. So he was sort of a precursor to that, fighting against the British Crown, and they had their own sense of liberty, and they had their own set of rules, which is, even the Pirates of the Caribbean gets that right, and, shows that they had this egalitarian society. And I think that's what's important about the pirates, is they were early practitioners of this sort of equality amongst all men. Right,
for sure. And I think too, there's definitely something personal, and I'll talk around this so that I don't spoil anything. I think it was Captain Gordon, who it's very obvious that, he had it in for Blackbeard, and there was a quote that I had written down, Samuel, that I wanted to share, and again, if you like, we can talk about it there, again, not to spoil anything, is that basically that he realizes that, as the quote said, I will do whatever it takes to see that the job is properly done. If we don't put a stop to Blackbeard and his gang of miscreants now, then we will only have ourselves to blame when the Outer Banks are turned into the armed pirate forces, New Madagascar or Nassau. I think that was the thing that was, to me, so interesting in the book, was that it was very personal, that he wanted to see Blackbeard brought down.
Yeah, and I think that's both you're talking about, Captain Gordon and some of the other people that were pursuing Blackbeard, but they were doing it under the orders of Governor Alexander Spotswood of Virginia, who was really, in the way it's portrayed in my book, is sort of like Jean Valjean of Les Miserables being pursued by the constable in Les Miserables that's after him, Javert. His name is Javert. And so it's kind of that same story. So it's really who's the villain and who's, the good guy. It's not black and white in this case, because Governor Spotswood was doing a lot of illegal things in his pursuit of Blackbeard and as governor of Virginia. Right. So I think that's one of the themes that resonates too, is, who's the villain really? Is it the guy who's chasing Blackbeard, or is it Blackbeard?
Right. I'm always curious, normally when I'm speaking to an author, Samuel, about a book, typically I'm talking about fiction when I ask this question, about surprises. I think, a lot of times when I speak to authors who are writing fiction, something might turn in the book that was unexpected to them, but the characters seem to be leading them in a certain way. What surprised you the most as you were researching, of course, the history of Blackbeard and writing your book?
I think one of the things, well, first of all, it's kind of one thing I've touched on, is how much of the history that we've been taught about Blackbeard is just false. He's been, he was a product of the propagandists of his day, in terms of, they made him out to be this, wild and crazy giant bearded man with lit fuses in his beard, and waving a saber crazily with a maniacal eyes, and he was none of that. He was a privateer who crossed the line, and then he couldn't go back. And he was in love with a woman that was been historically established, Margaret of Marcushook, that was in Philadelphia, that he was periodically trying to get back to her because he had a presence in Philadelphia. He served as a first mate aboard either a privateering vessel or a merchant vessel after the War of Spanish Succession, and before he became a pirate, and before the Spanish wrecks occurred off the coast of Florida. So, he's a guy that, he was not this cutthroat villain. He was a real person that loved a woman, and his crew loved him. He actually, pirates, when you look at the pirate code that is sort of explored a little bit in Pirates of the Caribbean, and they call them the articles, that really were said, it's really equality amongst, pay is almost close to equal. Captains usually got 2 and no more than 3 times what the crew did. But Blackbeard was unusually loved by his crew and was pretty much the leader who was never really challenged until towards the end of his career. So, I think that's one of the important things for me is to get history right with Blackbeard and to sort of correct these false impressions.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the great things about the book. And I think, too, I have to ask you about this. I would imagine so because, for me, when I finished this book, the one thing I wanted to do was go and look up more. Is that what you hope, too? People are so engaged in these historical individuals that they do want to know more outside of the book. Yeah,
I one of the things I did with this book, I tried to bring in the best and most recent research because this book's been in my head for 5 years. So, remember, I had an agent that wanted me to write it like 5 years ago, and then I finally got around to it now. So it's always been in my head. I go to Ocracoke, where he lived and fought and had for part of his piratical career. I've been to Bathtown. I've been all over, researching this book for years. It's been in my head. I've been writing in my head for years. So it kind of poured out of me pretty fast. So I do want people to go take the book and then go study more about it. But at the same time, there's a lot of bad research out there on Blackbeard that's just not plausible at all. So my thing is I wanted to correct all that. I realized I wrote a fiction book, or not, a historical fiction book, but really, like I said, 90% of the scenes are based on actual historical events, and I'm just trying to place the right people there and have the central conflict that was going on at that time. And what you get in historical fiction that you don't get in a history book is you get that original, that depth of character. You get their inner worries. You get their problems and their love life and just all the difficulties that they face on a daily basis. And Blackbeard had tremendous problems once his crew size was up to 700 seamen above 5 ships, with 60 to 70 cannons. He was the fiercest power of the Spanish Main and the Caribbean in late 1717 in early 1718, late 1717 and early 1718. Yeah. So, that's an important thing to consider for Blackbeard.
For sure. Well, it is a book that I definitely believe readers will enjoy, whether they're into history or just a great adventure. Samuel, I think they will definitely enjoy this book. Again, it's Blackbeard, The Birth of America by author Samuel Marquis. It's available now through our friends at Amazon.com or through your favorite bookstore. If they don't have it, they'd be more than happy to order it for you. And Sam, let our audience know, how can they stay connected with you?
Well, I have my website is SamuelMarquisBooks.com. And, people can email me anytime. I respond to emails individually. And also, the book is available not only on Amazon, it's in all indie bookstores, but it's also in Barnes & Nobles, and, or you can order it, one of the two. Yeah. And so, hopefully people will pick it up who maybe don't know about Blackbeard, or ones who do but kind of want to get a more updated version of Blackbeard, because it really is based on the most research from really the last 10 years. We've learned a lot of new things about Blackbeard and his origins in Jamaica as a fairly wealthy planter's son.
Got you. Well, I definitely think they'll enjoy the read. And Sam, I really appreciate you taking out the time to discuss it with us today.
Thank you very much, Cyrus, for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, the pleasure is definitely all mine, and we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. If you all came in late and missed part of the conversation with Samuel, don't worry. Thanks to our online friends, you all can catch the replay right as we go off the air. The link is already available through our social media sites. So head over to Facebook.com/Cyrus Webb or go to Twitter.com/Cyrus Webb. If you click on the link there, you can listen to the show completely for free and share it with your friends from there, too. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Make sure you take out time to enjoy some good music as well as a great book. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live today. You all make it a great one.